Okay, boomer, I'm just going to live it and take it. I'm going to be the Bitcoin boomer. How's that?
Howdy, everyone. Christine here with the TVC, and I am thrilled to be sitting here with Gary Leland, the Bitcoin boomer from the Bitcoin Boomer podcast and founder of the BitBlock Boom conference. And one of the things I love about Gary is he brings the wisdom of the baby boomer generation. He's lived through a lot, but he's also quite a visionary, being one of the first podcasters out there, well known in that space, and now dedicates full time to spreading the good news about Bitcoin. So, Gary, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, after that intro, I can't be anything but excited about being here. Yeah, nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. I think last time we talked was over at the Fort Worth Bitcoin Meetup group over there.
Absolutely. And you know, I've been so grateful for our viewers. You have been organizing meetups in the Bitcoin space for a while now, right? And it was originally in Dallas. Tell us a little bit about the meetups that you put on.
Well, I do meetups in Fort Worth and Dallas every month. It's meetup.com/bitblockboom if you want to join. And my meetups are just socials. I'm not really, when I go to a conference or to a meetup, I don't want to go sit and listen to someone talk. I want to meet people and network.
Yes.
And so my meetups are like that. Now, next week, we'll both be in Miami.
Yep.
For I just call it Bitcoin Miami, but I know that's not the official name. But Friday night or Friday morning, I'll have a coffee meetup there. I think I have like 150 people joining me for coffee.
Is it exclusive invite only, or
No, it's just on meetup.com. And I have one for Saturday morning. I actually closed off the one for Friday because so many people were coming. It's just a coffee shop. I don't know how they're going to handle it all. So I figured people would start piling in the Saturday. But I did that in LA out at the Swans Bitcoin Conference Pacific. And because I get up early every morning. So, you know, being an old fart, that's what you do is you wake up early. For some ungodly reason, you just have to get up early. I don't know why. That's one thing that's not good about being old is you never sleep in.
Oh, my goodness.
So I started having coffee meetups in the mornings.
I love it. Well, it's funny because you say that about you go to the conference not to listen. And that was one of the things about your conference, which is one of the most well-known Bitcoin-only conferences. And they have, I'm sure you know this, I hope I'm not giving away information, but a lot of people come to LobbyCon,
yes,
right, where they don't buy tickets.
Right.
They just sit in the lobby just to see all their friends.
And that's a smart thing to do. And I'll have some of them, though, won't buy the ticket to the conference, but they'll buy a ticket to the Friday night party or the Saturday night party or the Friday night event and the Sunday morning event, because they can buy those on menu, like whatever they want to. So yeah, that goes on. That's great. You know, I also owned another conference. I don't know if you know this. I owned the Podcast Movement. It's the world's largest podcasting conference. So I started that quite a while ago and sold it after 7 years, or my share of it.
Wow.
And right the year before COVID, we had 3,500 people. So it was a huge conference. And
in Texas?
No, it was traveled across the country. It was in Orlando, Pennsylvania, Anaheim, Chicago. Every year it's in a different city. I believe this year it's in Denver, but I don't own it anymore. So,
okay.
But at that conference, when I go to a conference, I like networking. And like at that conference was created because I went to Blog World in Vegas. And instead of watching people speak, I hang out in the hallways and talk to people. And
you do your own lobby.
I do my networking, and I found some people that wanted to do a conference, podcasters, and we started Podcast Movement. But I've never made any money watching those people talk and sitting in a chair. Never made a penny doing that.
Exactly.
My wife gave me a hard time all the time, but I make all my money, you know, at conferences, hanging out in the hallway. And that's what BitBlock Boom is. It's a opportunity to network. It's a networking conference.
Absolutely. Well, and I say this all the time, how grateful I am to be in Bitcoin in the bear market, because it really has washed away a lot of the grifters and a lot of people that are just trying to get rich quick. And it's left a lot of the true believers. And so I remember your conference last year was one of my not really, I mean, I'd been to a lot of meetups, but I started really going to conferences regularly, and it becomes one big family, you know? It's like seeing your friends.
Well, I was trying to create a family event. I really was. That was my goal. That's exactly.
With BitBlock Boom, or with your original one with the podcast?
BitBlock Boom. I wanted people to go. I wanted the conference to get to the point that it's coming up in August. You
Yeah.
know, it's always in August. And if someone says, hey, you want to go out on a boat or go on a vacation, I can't go in August. That's my family reunion. And that was what I was trying to accomplish. Going, well, yeah, I'd love to go to Bahamas, but I can't. It's my family reunion, and I get to see all those people one time a year.
Yes.
You know?
It's funny you're saying that because I'm actually trying to plan a trip to Hawaii, and I'm like, oh, I got to plan around Big Papu.
Well, good, it's working.
It really is a thing. So tell us a little bit about your history and how the genesis of the Bitcoin boomer. What got you in the space, but even before that, what got you into tech in general and podcasting?
Well, I was always really interested in tech. I bought my first computer, I think, in like '83. I bought a Mac I went in the store. I didn't even know what I wanted. I said, I need a computer. And I saw a friend of mine, and he was buying a compact with two places to put in the floppy disks.
Yeah.
And I said, I guess I want one of those. He goes, do you know how to write DOS? I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And he goes, well, that computer won't do you much good, but you might like this new one we just got in last week. It's an Apple Macintosh.
Oh, how funny.
And I said, well, what's the difference? He goes, oh, you just point and click this? I said, well, I'll take that puppy.
I was going to say, usually the tech people don't like the Macs because you can't like get under the hood.
But I went home and I was on it right away doing stuff. And then I remember when Windows 98 came out, they were in lines around the building. I said, why didn't you just buy a Mac if they just wanted to point and click? I mean, I've had one for 10 years. But I got into computers and I really enjoyed it. And as I was saying before the show, I wish they had computers when I was in high school. Oh my gosh, I probably would have just been in my room all the time. Oh, that's what's happening now, these kids. Though.
Yeah.
So, I started my first e-commerce site in '96, and everybody said, that's crazy. No one's going to buy stuff from you on the internet. And I said, well, I would buy stuff. So I started like the first wallpaper website for wallpaper that goes on your walls.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the e-commerce field. I ended up with, I just retired like 2 years ago, but I had like 20 e-commerce sites when I retired.
Wow.
I had the wallpaper website. Have you ever seen those little football helmets? They're like little mini helmets. I had minihelmets.com. I had baseballjunk.com.
Were you like Michael Saylor, where you grabbed up a bunch of these domain names before everybody thought to do it?
Yeah, I had a lot. But originally, though, when I was starting out, domain names were $175 back then.
Huh.
So you didn't grab a lot of them, unless you really knew it. So, but I still have a lot of domains. If the word podcast is in it, and
you
a
own
sport, baseball podcast, basketball podcast, football podcast. I think I sold football podcast, but it was a soccer team that bought it. Golf podcast, tennis podcast,
European football.
Yeah, you name the sport, and if it's the word podcast plural, pod or pods plural, I own that domain. Probably Wall Street podcast, New York pods. I mean, I have a lot of podcasts. Because when I was buying podcast domains, you could get whatever you wanted, except the sex ones. They were gone. Those guys are quick in tech.
Oh, wow.
No matter what you put, because then I was just like fishing on what in the heck is available here. There's no curse words that were available.
Were you beating out Michael Saylor? Because he got hope.com and...
Well, he paid big money for those, though, I think. I don't think...
Did he? He didn't buy them originally?
I felt like when I heard that story that he bought those for decent money, maybe not the money they're worth now, but that he wasn't getting them for $19 or $100. I don't know this. I'll ask him Saturday, but I don't know that for sure.
Man, that's going to be fun. There's one big party in Miami.
Yes, it will be. But I don't know that for sure. But that was my introduction into computers or technology and that's actually how I found out about Bitcoin was because of that.
Okay, so tell me about that.
Well, I was speaking about podcasting here in Dallas.
Okay. At
a conference called the Big D Conference. And after I was speaking, I walked down the hallway. Oh, look, there's minihelmets.com.
Oh, that's great.
And that is like so old. That was like,
look at this.
Yeah, that is so old. It became much better later on. Oh my gosh.
It's not even complete. The site is under construction.
No, this is like on the Wayback Machine.
Oh,
this is a point in history.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a point in history.
This was December 11th, 2002.
December 11th, 2002.
Oh my gosh, our websites would have, when you went to one room in the wallpaper website, it would have the kids' room would have Under the Mermaid played. We thought that was so cool. We had different songs. It was crazy what we did back then and thought was good. But so anyway, I was walking down the hall after speaking, and I ran into a friend of mine. There were 4 or 5 friends of mine from Dallas here in the hallway.
Okay.
And they were talking. One person was talking, Tony Casillas. He was talking and explaining Bitcoin to the other 4 friends of mine.
Okay.
And I came in about halfway through the conversation. And I'd heard of Bitcoin twice before. I'd been exposed to it, but not introduced to it really. And he introduced it during his conversation. He said it was the only missing protocol on the internet was a protocol for money.
Sure.
And when he said that, even though I had heard about it twice, that really kind of interested me because I was really big into e-commerce. So I said, Tony, I missed like half that conversation. Could you tell me the rest? And we sat on the couch and we started talking. Maybe it was 1, and at 6 o'clock, they were closing for the conference for the day, and we were still sitting on the couch talking.
Wow.
So I went home, listened to a podcast about Bitcoin on the way home.
Do you remember who it was?
I do remember who it was. It was the Bad Crypto Podcast with Joel. And Joel, I know from social media.
Okay.
He's the guy.
This is 2017.
Yeah, he's the guy who made the iFart on the iPhone. That you have 5 different fart sounds. He made like 30, 40 grand off of that. He made a lot of money, maybe even more than that. Joel, gosh, I can't think of his last name. Anyway, so I called him up and said, hey, I called my friend Tony.
Joel Comm and Travis Wright.
Thank you very much. And they still do that show today. But it's mostly about shitcoins, you know.
Okay.
So it was what came up.
So the first thing you listened to was about shitcoins?
I don't know what the
Bad
episode
Crypto Podcast.
Yeah, I don't know what the episode was about, but they were talking about most of their shows are about shitcoins now, or NFTs, or things that I'm not into.
Non-Bitcoin coins.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't know what
yes.
that episode was about because I searched Bitcoin, so it might have brought up an episode about Bitcoin for a
Okay.
minute. So I called Tony and said, "Hey, are you going to be at the conference tomorrow?" Which I wasn't going back to. He said, "Sure, I'm going to be there. It's only a mile from my house." I said, "Well, could I talk to you about Bitcoin again?" He said, "Sure." So I drove and listened to another podcast on the way there. I don't know what that podcast was. Met Tony. We talked for about an hour, went over his house. He was mining, showed me his mining rigs, and he had a extra, what are the little, well, it's not a cold card, but the small ones that CoinKite makes.
The ledger or the,
Open dime. He had an open dime, and he sold me an open dime for like $20, and I put $10 or $20 worth of Bitcoin on it. He showed me how.
And again, this was 2017.
Yeah, like middle 2017, before the big rise.
Okay.
And I went home that night, listened to another podcast on the way home, went home that night and bought Bitcoin, started buying Bitcoin. And
where were you buying it then, on Coinbase?
Yeah, Coinbase. Yeah.
Amazing.
And I was doing a referral code. So I made a podcast right away.
Of course.
Started getting a referral code because they gave you $10.
And did they pay you in fiat or Bitcoin?
No, in Bitcoin, I think. I think I actually paid you in Bitcoin. And then I started mining.
Just Bitcoin, or?
No, you couldn't mine Bitcoin without ASICs. And
okay,
so I was using, I can't think what it's called, but they were graphic cards.
Sure.
Gaming
the GPU.
cards. Yeah,
the
GPU mining.
Gaming cards.
I had a ton of GPU miners going, and I was mining Zcash and converting it to Bitcoin. Mined Ethereum for a little bit and but I always converted everything to Bitcoin.
I'm curious about your history with that because it's part of your brand that Bitcoin only.
Yeah.
Was it always that way?
No, well, I think I really don't try to give people a hard time for ever doing shitcoins.
Dabbling in other.
I think that's a natural progression.
Yeah.
I think if you don't have an understanding of what Bitcoin is, which I didn't at the time, I think you go, well, gosh, if Bitcoin went from a nickel to $50,000 or $30,000 or $20,000 or $1,000.
Yeah.
You go, gosh, if I get lucky on one of these ones that are a tenth of a penny,
right,
and they just go to a nickel.
Yep.
So I think that's a natural progression, and then people find out the hard way when it all tumbles and they lose all their money, or it gets hacked. Or
that was definitely my experience. I have to say.
I think it's everybody's experience who dwells in that world.
Right. Which I think it's important for people to kind of learn along the way, but I think for people that have been through all that, it makes us sometimes a little bit more vehement about beware of everything else.
I didn't become a Bitcoin maximalist until the first BitBlock boom.
Really?
I got orange pilled as a maximalist at my own conference.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
so did you have other cryptos at your first conference?
No, but we had a guy who was our platinum or gold sponsor who did he would spin up some kind of things on Amazon that you could get some kind of shit coins with or something.
Okay.
So we did have him there. He didn't speak, I don't think, but he was there and the sponsor had a table.
Okay.
But at that conference, it didn't take a lot to be the top But the real cool thing is he paid a Bitcoin and a half to be the sponsor.
Wow.
You know,
So originally it was this is financial protocol and its number go up. And what was it that took you down the orange pill at your own conference?
well, I listened to all my speakers. All my speakers were really maximalists. I had, Seyfuddin Amous, I had Pierre Rochard, I had Justin Moon, I had Bitstein, Michael Goldsmith. So all my speakers, I had Tor de Meister. I mean, all my speakers were pretty strong Bitcoiners. And, and the next day we had brunch, actually, Bitcoin brunch, our first Bitcoin brunch. And maybe there were 13 people there. It was over in North Dallas here, or in Addison. And I was talking to Safe. We were talking, and Safe said, I think this is the first Bitcoin maximalist conference I ever have been to in North America. And I said, oh.
They said that about your first conference, which
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily a maximalist conference.
No, it wasn't.
It just happened to be.
Yeah, it wasn't meant to be. I think, now I think about it, I think we had one guy at the end. We were hunting for a filler, and Tony, who was working with me, brought in this guy who might have talked about Ethereum. But I think everybody left the room when he talked. They all went out in the hallway so they could talk.
People can be very opinionated.
Then they all
about
came
the
back
topic.
in. So in all fairness, I think we did have him. But yeah, it was basically a Bitcoin. Everybody who attended were friends of the speakers for the most part. I wanted to see those speakers. And that was a hard conference to put on. I've had a lot of hard roads on the BitBlock Boom. That conference was hard to put on.
How many years have you been doing it?
This is my 6th year.
6 years.
Yeah, we were going out every night just giving tickets away because we had these people coming in from all over the country, and we couldn't have them show up. There's 20 people there. I mean,
everybody's in the lobby for LobbyCon.
Yeah. So, but everybody loved it. I mean, they really did. And then, the year of COVID.
Yeah. What'd you do that year?
They canceled. My hotel canceled like 2 weeks before the conference. I did a conference. I didn't stop.
You did?
Yeah, I didn't stop at all. But my hotel called me 2 weeks before the conference, goes, oh, Gary, I got bad news for you. We're shutting down the hotel. I'm like, what? Well, the good thing is when there's a pandemic, it's easy to find another hotel. I mean, nobody has any conferences going on.
Yeah.
So it's easy to find a conference hotel.
Wow.
So I held it there. Anyway, I don't think anyone got COVID, but that I know of, because that was like the big deal.
That
Everybody's
was in
talking about.
August. So the pandemic had already been going on for 6 months.
It started in
People kind of
March.
knew their risks.
Yeah, it wasn't like a surprise thing. Actually, a Clubhouse had started maybe a month or two before the conference, I think, or that's when I was aware of it. And I got on a Clubhouse room and I was talking about BitBlock Boom, and one of the other people in there said, is that an in-person conference? And I said, yeah, it's an in-person. And he goes, that's happening? And I was like, yeah, that's happening. And like that day, I sold like 100 tickets. Because people
were so longing to just get in
they
front
had not been to a Bitcoin conference all year. Yeah.
And was it well attended?
It was well attended. Yeah, it was well attended.
Isn't that interesting?
It
That
was really
seems to be
crowded.
your brand, right? Because with these meetups that you do, it's like we just want to get together face to face,
Yeah.
and magic happens when we're face to face. And especially if you're thinking about working with people in the space, you want to work with people that you trust. You've been in their presence. You've experienced the way that they do business, the way that they interact.
Yeah, I think I've established a pretty strong name that people know they can trust me.
Yeah.
Like we don't even allow people to take pictures at the event, because some people don't want their pictures taken. We allow people to use aliases when they buy their tickets, because some people don't want anyone to know they're there.
The respect for privacy.
Yeah, I'm really strong on that. Like I've had vendors I've had 2 vendors that which I'm not going to mention because my goal is never to like make anyone look bad. I just don't get any. There's no gain there.
Right.
But I had 2 that have asked me if I could give them the mailing list. And I'm like, no, I can't. And they're going, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, I can't give you my mailing list. I can't. Sorry. Oh, well, I kind of, one was like, I didn't think you would, but they told me to ask.
Right.
And the other one was like, I really thought you'd give it to us. I was like, no, I don't care how much you pay.
Yeah. I mean, information is so powerful and it's so valuable. And that's why you have an even greater responsibility to guard it. Yeah. If someone's trusted it to you.
Yeah. And then usually at the end of the year, I completely wipe all the accounts on the
do you really?
On the I don't know if I did it last year or not, though, to be honest with you.
So there's not even
they have to go in and build a new account if they want to buy tickets again. They can't buy them on the account.
Yes, you can't log in and buy your ticket from last year.
Yeah. So you have to go in and create a new account.
So tell me about your brand. So you're the Bitcoin Boomer. Tell me about the genesis of that and the podcast that you do.
Well, the Bitcoin boomer was kind of a natural progression. Like I said, I started podcasting. I was one of the first 50 podcasters. I had the world's largest podcast conference, and I'm in the Podcast Hall of Fame. So no matter what I'm
Pretty
going to do, I'm
amazing.
going to be podcasting, I guess. So that's where all that came from. But I started getting into Bitcoin, and I was at the office, and my office was just a big room, and everybody. I've been doing this since I started business. Everybody was in the same room. I know that's the big thing now, but I was doing that. I wanted to see how everybody was doing.
Yeah.
If you were screwing around on your computer
Yeah.
or talking on the phone, I wanted to know it. I didn't want everybody to have all these little
Yeah.
offices. So my computer was facing me, but everybody else's screen I could see. So I knew what everybody was doing. I'd say, "What are you
That's
doing
funny.
over there?"
That's
"Oh,
funny.
I was check my Facebook page." But
Busted.
yeah. So I've been, like I said, I don't even know why I brought that into the story. Now that I'm thinking about it, but I was always the podcaster, and I started doing shows, and then sorry, now I'm track. See, it's a boomer moment there. I have these more now. Anyway, we were talking one day. All of us are all young. They're all college or high school that worked for me. They wrote my pages, my computer. They wrote my websites. I'd have high school kids, and they would work for me until they went to UTA, and then. Anyway, we were sitting around one day, and they were telling me about how boomers destroyed the world. Because I said, "Hey, I watched this show, and this teacher went off the wall on the YouTube channel. Some student said, 'Okay, boomer.'" That was a thing that people said several years ago.
Yeah.
"Okay, boomer." And she
Yeah,
went
it's
off
really
the hook.
disrespectful.
And she was like, "What in the hell do you mean?" No, she's a teacher, so she didn't say that. But she's like,
Yeah.
"What do you mean call me a boomer? I am not going to take that off you." And she's going crazy. And I said, "What's this lady going so crazy for? She is a boomer." I mean, a boomer just means you were born like between 1946 and 1965 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a time period, like a millennial, or no one's going to get upset to go, "Oh, you millennial." They go, "Oh, why you call me a millennial?" So I said, why didn't she look in the mirror? She's a boomer. And then the kids, they were all 17 to 24, maybe. They said, "Well, you boomers have destroyed the world." I said, "What are you talking about? I hadn't done jack." And she goes, "Search boomers," and a term they gave me. I searched it, and oh man, there were just tons of videos about how boomers had either destroyed the economy, destroyed the money, destroyed the world, destroyed the environment, destroyed everything. And I was going, well, I had nothing to do with all that. And I said, I think that's pretty much all BS too. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to live it and take it. I'm going to be the Bitcoin boomer. How's that? And that's what I said. And so
we're saving the world.
Yeah, I said, I don't know. I think I've done pretty good. I haven't heard anything, So I just took the name. I thought it was a good name. But just
It's
I've
a
always
great
liked
name.
I've always liked the double iterations anyway. My podcast, like I'm 2004. I created one of the first podcast directories, like before iTunes. If you wanted to go find a podcast, you had to come to my website. It was me and another guy that had a website.
You collated them all.
Yeah, and I called it Podcast Pickle. So I've loved double iterations.
Yeah.
But you had to come to my website, and you'd plug in your iPod and hook it up to and download. You download your podcast all night, so you could listen to them the next day on your iPod.
Oh, how funny!
Yeah, and then they made a genre on iPods for podcasts. That was a big moment in podcast history. Okay, it says podcast on there, And then the iPhone came out with podcasts and destroyed the whole environment at the time. There was no need for my directory.
It became centralized.
Yeah, it did. And Apple made a much better podcast directory than I had. But I remember I came home one night after we were making that. I told my wife, I said, "Man, we got 50 podcasts on there. Man, let's go out and celebrate. 50 people have registered their podcasts."
So you're a teacher, and it's a funny thing when you're listening to someone regularly, you feel like you know them and they have no idea who you are, right? But you probably have a lot of people sharing stories with you about how you changed their life.
Yeah, I do. And I call that the TV effect.
Mm-hmm.
An example is one time I was on a plane going to a podcast conference in Ontario, California in like 2005. And I was sitting in the plane and I heard a guy named Scott Fletcher. I never met Scott, but I heard him. He did a Bitcoin podcast about podcasting.
Okay.
And I said, "Scott, is that you up there?" And he was like 4 or 5. He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Gary, is that you back there?" He recognized, and this guy like 4 or 5 seats back goes, "Hey, this is Joe back here." We all knew each other from our voice.
That's amazing.
But yeah, that's I do. I had there's a podcaster called Grammar Girl. Mignon Fogarty. She was like the first podcaster on one of the first podcasters on TV. She was on Oprah. They brought her on there to tell Oprah if she was being grammatically correct on something, when the first podcasters on TV. And I saw her maybe 5-6 years ago. So this was like in 2006, she was on Oprah. And she told me that the whole reason that she had her whole existence today as what she is in life is because of my website. She came to my website and learned how to podcast, and I was helpful to her.
Wow.
And there was another girl who, lots of people tell me that they came and I was helpful somewhere. And because of either what I created, the content, or meeting me, or what I did, their whole life changed. And that's the best part, really, is when someone tells you that.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And what about now, as you're teaching about Bitcoin, does your message resonate the most? Are there other boomers that are listening?
Well, they do, because like this weekend coming up will be an excellent example. There's so many people in Miami. I will be stopped, I don't know how many times, by someone who will be obviously a boomer. You don't have to do anything but look at them. And they're at a Bitcoin event. So you know they're a Bitcoin boomer. I mean, you don't have to do too much putting two and two together. But I'll be stopped a lot of times by people. This happens every year at this event because there's so many people there. And someone say, "Hey, Gary, I just want to shake your hand." And it's like, okay. And they go, "I'm a Bitcoin boomer too."
Oh, and they're all proud now.
And I go, yeah. So it's kind of like I made being a Bitcoin boomer cool.
Cool.
But I love me. And it's funny, though. It's funny how worried people are about taking up a lot of your time. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I just want to shake your hand and say hi.
Yes.
But you can take all the time you want. I don't have anywhere to be. I mean, So I enjoy that a lot. But, one of the problems I really have is, with the exception of that event, when I'm with like my peer group, like if I go to a party, for instance, for Halloween, let's say I go to a Halloween party and a guy 65 or something's had the party, I really have no one to have anything to talk with in common. Because they're all old. None of them are into anything tech. They're all into, either they're retired and they're into playing golf, or they wouldn't even have a computer if they didn't have a phone. That's the only reason they even have a computer. So it really has its downsides too. Now this weekend will be great because everywhere I go will be a lot of young people.
It's your tribe. It's your people.
Yeah, but they're all like 35 and under for the most part.
That is so interesting that you say that, because I love Bitcoin meetups, because Bitcoiners are some of the most interesting people in the whole world. They're paying attention.
I'm always the stupidest person in the room.
No.
I mean, I really am. I mean, there's so many smart people in the world of Bitcoin.
But it's such a unifier, because it doesn't matter what age you are, what race you are, what country you're from. We talk Bitcoin and we see the world similarly. Like, we have similar values. We all kind of lean a little bit libertarian, no matter what our political, of respect for privacy and decentralization, but also paying attention to what's going on in the world and with the printing of the money. And I just find it endlessly fascinating to connect with other Bitcoiners, that it does kind of spoil you for the rest of the world a little bit.
You were involved, our Texas Blockchain Council was involved with the mining summit over in Fort Worth. This is interesting. I'm walking down the hallway, and from past the table where you checked in, they had those little gift bags and stuff. I'm walking down the hallway, and this girl comes running up who's 19 or something and goes, Mr. Leland. And I go, yes. She goes, "You're Gary Leland, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." She goes, "Hi, I'm," introduced herself, a real nice young girl. She goes, "My mother is so-and-so in Portugal, and she loves you." Not romantically, but she loves your show and your input. "And could I get a picture with you? She'd love to see that." And I said, "Sure." And so she goes, "Do you mind if my mom, I think she's friended you already on LinkedIn." I said, "Oh, I'm sure." I accepted it. I mean,
Yes.
I said, "Tell her I'm coming to Portugal next September." And so she's already emailed me. And
wow.
I think she's like an hour from where we're staying in some cute little town I wasn't even familiar with.
And now you're going to get the local treatment.
Yeah, so we're going to go there. And then yesterday, or day before yesterday, a guy from Barcelona interviewed me for a show in Barcelona. And he's like, "Oh, you're going to be here. How long are you here?" I said, 5 days. He goes, "Oh, I want to take you out to dinner." So you can go, if you're a Bitcoiner, you can go anywhere in the world and meet people that have the same, and you find your tribe. They're all over the world, and they're starving for people to talk to. That's why BitBlock Boom does so well. If you're in Pierre, I'm just making up a town, Pierre, South Dakota, Probably the biggest town in South Dakota.
Yeah.
You know, or it's one of them. Let's put it this way. You may not know another Bitcoiner.
Mm-hmm.
You may, and if you have some, you may know one, but you don't know anyone at your level.
And your family's like, please don't talk to me about this anymore.
Yeah, they're like, we're going to this party tonight. Your wife's
You're
going,
not allowed
do
to
not talk about
the
Bitcoin
economy."
tonight. I used to hear that all the time. Do not talk. I said, well, what if they ask? You just say, I don't want to talk about it right now. But that person has probably no one to talk about that has any.
Yes.
And so he comes to BitBlock Boom and he's like, oh my gosh, here's
Mm.
500 people who want to talk about Bitcoin. That's all they want to talk about. It's like heaven, you know, and that's the way it is whenever you
Yes.
go anywhere. If you go anywhere in the world and you're a Bitcoiner, if you post, you know, and tag the city and post properly, or at least ways, I guess maybe I got enough followings I can.
Yeah.
But if I post, I'm going to be in Charleston, South Carolina. If they want to meet me for coffee, I'm going to have a couple dozen people show up to meet me for coffee to talk about Bitcoin, you know, and that's all they want to talk about, you know.
Yes.
Certainly they don't want to meet me. I'm just an old guy. I don't have anything really going on, but they want to talk Bitcoin. That's the main thing.
The unity comes when people are facing the same direction, right? Or working toward a same goal. I had a friend of mine, he's been in oil and gas many years, and I brought him to the Empower conference. You know Empower, right?
Yeah.
So it's power and Bitcoin, energizing Bitcoin. Anyway, so I was introducing him to everybody, and it was interesting hearing his perspective of it. And it's a very fascinating flavor with the Bitcoin community because there's not, you know, we've all been jaded by life, but there's this hope, you know, like this beautiful technology and this beautiful hope, and everyone has their way that they're saving the world through Bitcoin. And it's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's a flavor to the conversation where it's like it's uplifting and synergizing.
Being around if you're a Bitcoiner, being around other Bitcoiners is really a great thing to do. I mean, you know, that's why I enjoy the meet. A lot of stuff I do, I just do because I want to do it. I wanted to go to a Bitcoin conference. I want to go to a Bitcoin meetup.
Right.
You know, so I just make them instead of going, gosh, I wish there were one. You know, a lot of people just about go, oh, I wish there was a Bitcoin meetup around here that was any good. Just make one.
Just do it.
It's not that technical. It doesn't take a lot of time. Just get off your ass and do it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the way I am. I just go ahead and do it.
So if someone were to say, okay, Gary, why Bitcoin? What would be your case? What's some of the things you most focus on?
On Bitcoin? Well,
Yeah.
I think Bitcoin, the main thing is that it's the decentralization. You know, I believe in proof of mining, proof of work. I don't believe in proof of stake. You know, I've seen now two getting ready to be, I guess, before long, our third time of all the shit coins disappearing. You know, it's like this. When I guarantee you that next year, when Bitcoin starts hitting 100, all these same people that were here when it was going up to 69 are back. They disappeared immediately because no one was buying their BS.
Right.
But as soon as that is in there and all these people are coming in that don't understand Bitcoin, all these scammers are going to be back.
Yeah.
They just come back, and then when it dies off again, which it does, because this is a cyclical thing, it won't go down as low, but it'll go down.
Right.
They'll disappear, and then they'll come back 4 years later for the next happening.
Yeah.
You know, but Bitcoin is, like I said, the decentralization and proof of work. I don't understand how first of all, I'm going to say for Ethereum, for instance, everybody says it'll never happen again, but they've already rolled back, you know, their blockchain one time. If you've done it once, I don't know why you can't do it again. Yeah, they'll never do it again. But I bet those same people a year before they did it the first time would have said, well, they'll never do it.
Right.
You know, now they won't ever do it again.
Right.
So would it be, well, they wouldn't do it a third time. I mean, you know, and then, you know, okay, let's say if the U.S. government does decide, I'm going to say U.S. government because that's where we live.
Right.
I mean, other governments probably have already decided this, maybe, but China has. But let's say the U.S. government decides that all Bitcoin and crypto, you know, they don't like it. Well, couldn't they just go to Ethereum's home office, wherever Buterin goes in every day and say, shut it down or you're going to prison?
Right.
And that's the end of it?
Certainly.
Where I think it's a little harder to do with the Bitcoin since it's the largest network in the world.
Can't exactly
all
call
the
up
nodes
the
and all the
CEO.
minings. And, you know, even if you shut down the whole U.S., it doesn't mean you're going to shut down Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You know?
People always find it funny because I tell them now, if you lose your private keys, there's no department to call to get them back. You know, surely there's someone you could call.
Well, you know, that's the thing about Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, you are your own bank.
Yep.
I mean, you really are your own bank.
Yep.
So you have no one to call for help. And we are so trained to be taken care of in this country that that's a hard thing for people to do. But being your own bank is a great power. And as Voltaire said, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people argue Uncle Ben said that on Spider-Man, but he got it from Voltaire. And Uncle Ben did say that, but he got it from Voltaire.
This is where the wisdom of the boomers comes in. Remind us.
Well, I just was wondering because I knew Spider-Man didn't make that up,
That's
his
so
uncle.
funny.
So I looked at him and said, who in the hell made this up?
Voltaire.
And Voltaire, he's a smart man back then. He made up a lot of great quotes back then.
Yes.
So, but that's the thing about Bitcoin is you're pretty safe. Yeah, I assumed if the United States made it illegal, it's going to drop in value.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have been trying to get out of it, but it's going to keep on plugging along. And now, being 68, if it takes 20 years to get back, I don't know that I'll be seeing the golden streets, but people who are younger still are, and they're going to know that, and they're going to hold their Bitcoin. It's not like in 1932 or whatever the year was when they took all the gold.
Right.
Back then, they took all the gold, and people were really patriotic, and they thought it was their patriotic duty to turn it in.
Yeah.
Said we need to turn this in, but people aren't going to do that for Bitcoin. We've been screwed so many times by the government and lied to so many times.
Yeah.
That they're not going to go, oh my gosh, let's turn in all my Bitcoin, and then the next year it's worth triple. Because I gave it all up, but I got to keep 0.005 because they got to keep like 10 ounces of gold or something like that back then. Yeah. They could keep like 10 ounces or 5 ounces. I'm not sure of the amount. But the fine back then, see, that's why they all turned in their gold, too. Not only were they patriotic. Now, I know I'm shifting subjects here, but, if you're a Bitcoiner, you're following me.
Yeah, I'm totally tracking you.
Yeah, but, back then, the fine, if you didn't turn your gold in, was $10,000. In today's money, that's like $200,000.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty steep fine.
So punitive. Yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty steep fine for just keeping what's yours.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything wrong. You're just keeping something that you bought, and you bought it legally.
Right.
But now they're saying, you got to turn that in, or you're going to pay $200,000 per ounce, I think it was. Fine. So if you had those 5 ounces of gold, that's $1 million you owed in today's money.
Wow. So from your perspective, because you've lived a longer life and you've seen a lot of shift, and how would you characterize what we're seeing now? Because it does seem like there has been quite a shift from just trusting the institutions to always have our back and always have our best in mind. And now there's much more of inability, I think, to trust.
I think it started with the Vietnam War. I think that started causing the loss of trust. That's the first. You didn't see any protests for World War II. Maybe a little bit for Korea, but not much. No protest for World War I. Everybody ran down there and signed up, back then, in those days. Except my dad, I think he got drafted, so he wasn't signed up. But my brother signed up, but he signed up for the Vietnam War, so I don't know what that means. So, but anyway, with Vietnam War, people started protesting, they were rioting, they were all coming home in body bags. The press was, the government, I'm not going to say the press was lying, but the numbers they were giving out sure made us look like we were doing a lot better than we were doing. And we never did win that war. Yeah. And it finally came. So I think people started getting they mistrusted people, the government. That was the start of it, I think, was the Vietnam War. I remember as a kid, we were protesting the Vietnam War. Kids nowadays, they don't protest anything. They just go along with the whole indoctrination. I don't understand where all that just complete trust on that came in. So maybe they would give all their stuff to the government if they asked. They believe anything else they say, But that's where I think the problem came in, the mistrust came in, is with Vietnam. And then there's been so many things that have happened. We've had Watergate, back then. That was another one. We had, who's the guy? I can't think of his name now. Doesn't matter. There's so many people that have gone to jail for not a good reason.
Assange and
yes.
Do you think that is part of the reason that Bitcoin is so appealing?
Is because
it's trustless.
Yes, I think that is a reason Bitcoin. I think, as you said earlier, a lot of people who like Bitcoin really are libertarians. I think it's easier to get a libertarian to go over to Bitcoin than it may be to get someone else. To go. But if you have a libertarian tendencies, which I have on my daughter one day said, "Dad, I think I'm a libertarian." I said, "I understand, but they'll never win, so you're just throwing your vote away." I mean,
Well, and it's funny because I wouldn't say that I've ever thought of myself as libertarian in the past, but I think, I mean, I'm younger than you, but I'll also live some life, and as I grow, I see that the people have so much more in common than the media would like us to believe.
I think they like to keep us separated.
Yes, exactly. And we all just want to live our life.
And I don't understand the media. I don't understand what the deal is on keeping us separated. I think, for instance, there's more race baiting or race wars, whatever you want to call it now, than there was when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like, to me, I thought that things were getting better, maybe not fast enough. I'm not claiming things are great, so don't get me wrong. But I think they're worse now than they were, but not as bad as they were.
Interesting.
So,
and again, that's one of the beautiful things about the Bitcoin space. I had Justin Redrick. Have you met him? The Bitcoin vegan. He's got a fantastic story.
I have met. He has a book out.
Yeah, that's right. Bars to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I met him in Miami last year at the Lamar Wilson's Bitcoin, his rooftop event.
Yeah, so loved talking to him. Just the experience of different people, all different people that, different races and different, as we said earlier, areas of the country and backgrounds. And they all were so much more in common that a lot of the other differences just kind of evaporate when you see. It's like, we love the same things. We want the same things, freedom and family and prosperity. And it's a very unifying experience. When
I was helped write the book, Bitcoin and the American Dream, Lamar Wilson was my roommate.
Okay.
And Lamar and I lived together basically for 5 days. And we did a lot of talking about, and Charlene Frederipo, I'm not sure if I said her last name right. She was there with us. And the reason I'm saying that is she was Black, and we're talking about a Black person right now in that situation. They really educated me on things I didn't know about. The main thing they educated me on was how the wealth had been stolen from the Blacks. The Blacks had never acquired wealth like white people did. They just weren't able to acquire the wealth. There were things held against them, so they couldn't acquire wealth, generational wealth. And I found that a very interesting story. And that's the thing about Bitcoin, is that you can use it to create generational wealth.
Yes.
And also, let's say you don't have a high income and you want to start investing money and creating generational wealth, and you go to Fidelity and you tell them, I got $20 a month here.
Yeah.
I like to dip into Bitcoin. Adios, muchachos. They're not going to waste your time, their time on you.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin, you can buy $5 worth a month, $5 a week, $5 a month, whatever you want to, and you create your wealth as slow as you need to.
Yeah.
And with what Bitcoin will probably do in the next 10 years, you could actually create, even with small amounts of money on a regular basis, just if you didn't smoke your cigarettes or drink your beer. That's what I always say. If I smoked, I would quit smoking and spend that money on Bitcoin. And when I said that, I wasn't implying Black people smokers drink beer more than anyone else. I'm just saying, at that point, I'm drinking anyone who's drinking beer or smoking pot.
Right.
Or doing cocaine or whatever anyone's doing that's a vice. Quit doing those vices and put it in Bitcoin, and you could really change your whole existence for your family.
It's a shift, because we've been in a system that's inflationary. So you hold it in dollars and its purchasing value goes down, 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 down. And, with Bitcoin, disclaimer, we don't know what the price will do. Yeah. And, I always tell people, if you're going to buy in, do it slowly over time. Don't put next month's rent money in. However, because it's a scarce supply, if adoption continues, it's supply and demand, right? There is the very real possibility that it just keeps going up. And so that's a very different experience than holding your money in something and not being able to buy as much. If you hold it over time, and again, with the appropriate qualifiers, for that value, it's like the whole Bitcoin pizza dilemma, right? He spent 10,000 Bitcoin to buy that pizza.
And he did that more than once,
I did not know.
Yeah, he did that more than once.
I also like to really take a step back and look at worldwide. So, what's going on, let's say, in Lebanon, where the value of their currency dropped by 90% in one day,
Or
or
Argentina just did the same thing.
yes, and I think they're having riots at central banks. I think that might be Lebanon, because they're not letting the money out. But then also the story of Africa, right? And the countries that have the CNA franc. Farida talks a lot about this. I'm always the most fascinated by those conversations, just kind of the human rights aspect of Bitcoin.
Well, that's a whole nother story, the way those countries are getting screwed.
Yeah, the way
That's
that
a whole
like
story by itself.
they like 40% is lost or 60% is lost in the translation to the euro. And so just for the fact of being born not in the United States to get access to what's been the world reserve currency, they take a tremendous hit. And just the injustice of that. And so the way that Bitcoin equalizes.
Well, there's no reason for the government should even be involved in currency. I mean, when you get down to it, I mean, lots of people say, oh, government needs to run it. Why? I mean, they weren't running it forever. You know, the states used to run it. There used to be lots of banks that had notes. You know, you don't have to have you never had to have the government involved to have money. Governments just wanted to control the money.
Isn't it interesting, though, that we're having these conversations now? Like, who talked about the Fed before? Or just the
Rand Paul?
Well, yeah, Rand Paul. I saw a meme the other day.
Dr.
It was like, all roads lead to Rand Paul was right.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, that guy's been wanting to audit the Fed forever.
Right. But now it's a common conversation, right? They're even talking about...
Well, you know, the thing about Bitcoin really is that I didn't even know the word fiat until I got into Bitcoin.
Was it even? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know that word, which is so simple. My wife says the same thing. She goes, I didn't know that was a word. You know, there are so many things. You know, once you go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you really start wanting to learn about money to find out why this is better money.
Yeah.
And once you start going down that hole, you find out all these things. You know, you find out about Jekyll Island. You find out about them taking the gold away. You find out about 1971 when they took the gold dollar. You find out all of these things.
Right.
And but you don't know any of this stuff. The average person does until they become a Bitcoiner.
And then you start paying attention to the fact that Saudi Arabia says they're not so interested in pleasing the United States anymore, or doing oil for dollars exclusively, and what that means.
Yeah, what happens when the petrodollar disappears?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff happening right now. I know people have been predicting the fall of the dollar, the fall of the United States for a long, long, long time. But there's more stuff happening right now than there's ever been happening when they were saying it before. You're right. And you have, not only do you have all this stuff, not only you have Saudi Arabia saying they're not going to accept just dollars, you have Argentina and Brazil working together with their money, not using US dollars.
Right.
You know, you have Russia and China working together, not using US dollars.
Yeah.
A lot of people are starting to not use US. But why would you want to use US dollars if you were another country? I mean, really, I don't think you really say, man, this is the best thing that's ever happened to us to be able to use this currency that drops in value 10% or 8% last year, probably 20, but you know, the real number. But, you know, I mean, when the dollar drops in value due to inflation, it drops across the whole world.
Yeah.
Now we're in the United States, we're getting
ours
something.
Less.
We're getting something out the deal. Whether we're giving money to people moving here from illegal immigrants to help them out, or whether we're paying off college debt, or whether we're doing Social Security, or whatever it's being spent on, most of it's being spent on and consumed somehow through here, a lot of it.
Right.
Where if you're in Argentina and the US dollars, you're not getting jack out of it. You're just having less value for your money, and you're not getting anything on the other end.
That's something that I've thought more and more about as I've studied Bitcoin, the privilege of the world reserve currency. And some of the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they've been saying this. You print money and you come and you take our commodities, and it's not fair.
It's like the best deal ever. We give them some paper,
right?
And they give us
or
cars.
Not even paper, right? Push the button.
You get cars and planes and boats.
Exactly. And oil. And I just yesterday I watched this documentary, The Toxic Cost of Going Green, and it was about, it was put out a year ago, and it was about cobalt. And I don't know if you saw, Joe Rogan did that interview with the man who went into the cobalt mines in the Congo, and he was saying there is there's no clean cobalt. Every single one of those mines is with people that are working for $1 a day, and the industry, they've poisoned the rivers, and the food won't grow, and there's birth defects, and like that the from the toxin from the mining companies coming in. But I'm just watching this and I'm thinking, you know, slavery has a lot of forms, and so much of what slavery is, and you know, it's a spectrum, and I'm not trying to say that everything is slavery, but there's actually more people in actual slavery today than the whole history of the transatlantic slave trade, and that is egregious. But then you have, you know, just kind of a slight away from that, these situations where these people are going into these hand dug mines and it's collapsing on them, but there's no other way out. And the whole idea of when you labor, you need to store the value of that labor in something. And we store it in our currency, right? And so with inflation, that kind of goes away, and it gets less and less, and you have no power to break out of that situation that you're in. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling.
No. Yeah, but you know, it's even worse than what you're thinking. See, you're just thinking, you're still thinking like a nice person. You know, you're thinking like a nice person. You realize if you are having slaves, if you're having people do stuff for you like that, that one man with a machine gun can control 100 kids way easier than you can 100 adults.
Yeah.
So in those countries, the child labor is just horrendous because they're easier to control. I mean, 20 of them can jump on you and you take your gun and you still can like come out of it alive.
Yeah.
You know, so the child slavery or the child abuse is what I call it. I mean, another thing that also gets me about the green environment, I'm all for saving the planet.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
I may not do a great job of it, but I'm definitely, I don't want anyone who walks around going, I want the planet to die.
Right.
I don't
want clean air or clean water.
I want poor water and have my ancestors all be deformed when they're born.
Yeah.
But the oil thing, I don't understand the oil thing at all from a green environment movement. Okay, we're not going to send oil in a pipeline that if it does get blown up, we can turn off and we can take bulldozers in there and clean it up. Instead, and wherever it's coming out the ground, we know is safe and being done properly. Instead, we're going to bring it in from over in the Middle East where they could care less about it, put it on a boat and hope it doesn't sink.
Yeah.
And if it did sink, there's no way we're going to clean it up.
Yeah.
And we would rather do that. Because, I mean, that's what I would think. And like I said, I'm not the greatest at putting all this stuff together, but I'm just common sense wise. I'm just an old boomer common sense guy. I'm going, wouldn't the number one goal be to say, hey, you can't import oil. You got to get it here and cut out the bringing up the oil out of the ground improperly and destroying the environment, putting it on a ship and say, that's our first goal, is to not import any. And you got to get it all from North America.
Yeah.
And then when you got to that point, then you can start cutting it down. But instead, they're going, well, let's cut down the cleanest stuff we got and keep bringing in the bad stuff. I don't understand that.
Which, doesn't it go back to where we started with decentralization, right? And this move away from a globalized complete, you know, like we print the dollar and they mine the cobalt that gets in my phone, but bringing it back home and making more of a organic, sourced more locally ecosystems for thriving across the world.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
I don't know. Would you disagree? Or
I you know what? Like I said, I'm all in the favor of, I just don't think we're doing the oil properly. I just think we ought to be doing oil here, not somewhere else. And I'm not even talking about America first. I'm talking about, I know it's a disaster where they're pumping that stuff overseas.
Yeah.
You know, just like you said, the cobalt mines, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
You know, those people are being killed. They're working for nothing. They're child labor.
Yeah.
But we'd rather do that. And, you know.
Yeah.
Might not have any cobalt here, so might not have a choice on cobalt.
Yeah. Well, Gary, I could talk to you forever.
Well, you know, I get into a lot of things probably that, you know, I shouldn't even get into.
Well, it's interesting. And that's why I love your meetups so much, because it always sparks fascinating conversation. So for our viewers, where can they reach you?
Well, the best place to find me is on Twitter, Gary Leland, but I'm Gary Leland. I think everywhere except for Instagram. Someone beat me there, Gary_Leland there.
Okay.
Yeah. There's
And
probably about
you're-
20 Gary Lelands on Twitter.
And you're
all with my picture too.
oh gosh, I know. That's why I had to do the blue check. I know everyone like gets so mad, but about having to pay the $8, but I'm like, hey, it's worth it because
I think
there's so many
the
fakers.
$8 worth it because I can edit my post.
Oh, that too.
That's worth something. For me, when I do it, I
I'm
look
the
at it and go,
worst.
oh my gosh, I'm glad that
I have
didn't
to
get
edit
out.
like every post, which
So do
you'll
I.
see on my LinkedIn page where it has the history of the editing. Anyway, and then for BitBlock Boom, what if they wanted to join
Just
you there?
Go to bitblockboom.com. All the info's there. It's pretty easy. You can actually buy your tickets online. And if you want to sponsor it, you can even buy a sponsorship online. You don't even have to talk to me.
Excellent. Well, Gary, thank you so much.
Oh, I've
and
enjoyed it.
Hope to have you back again soon.
Hey, it's Amy. Click over here to subscribe, click over here for more content, and we'll see you next time.